Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Minister is here with us and the panel team for this press conference. My name is Lindiwe Majele Sibanda. I will be the chair. It's always good to know who is here, and we don't want to take too much time, but I'll give you a chance to all go around and say who is here so that the panelists have an idea of who to be responding to. Then there will be a slight change to our program. We did plan to have the presentation, 2 minutes overview from each of the people up here, but I would like that we start with Anne from Yara, because she has to go to the side event where she's presenting. So we'll start over with you, then the panelists will introduce themselves. So can we do a quick round? Media house you represent and your name.
Shall I start?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'm Laurie Gearing from Reuters Internet.
Right behind.
Kirsten Gearing from Biodiversity International.
Excellent.
Vanessa Medu, I'm with the ARDD social media team.
Thank you.
CGR.
Okay. Thank you.
Andrea Portari with CGR.
Thank you. And Michael?
And Michael Hodel will be blogging up front first.
Thank you. Up front, we'll also do the same, have a round of introductions, self-introductions, and you first.
I'm Ann Tutwiler, Deputy Director General, FAO.
Microphone.
Ann Tutwiler, Deputy Director General for FAO.
Marcelo Crivella, Minister of Fisheries in Brazil.
Frank Reisenman, the CEO of the CGIAR Consortium.
Anne-Grete Dalane, Regional Director for Yara International in Latin America.
Thank you. I see we've been joined by other people. We've just gone through a round of introductions. We'll go bang on with an overview on knowledge generation and extension in agriculture by Anne-Grete Dalane from Yara. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you very much. We are very excited to be here because we believe that industry and private sector play an important role in meeting the challenges that the world has. Knowing that agriculture is responsible for 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions, 40% of the jobs in the world, and actually 50% of the poor and hungry people works in agri-sector, just show that the dimension of the challenge. And representing Yara, which is a fertilizer company, for us it's important to take on this challenge and really see how can we fit to a more sustainable agriculture. We believe that our most important contribution is the knowledge we have built up through many, many years about nutrition. So we use our expertise within nutrition to make sure that we provide the right offer to our farmers, to the right crop. Not to use more fertilizer than necessary, because that is a waste of resources, both for the farmers, but also is bad for environment. But it's also a big challenge that the world need to produce more food, not using more land, which means that also all the farmers that are not having sufficient nutrients in the soil also needs to get the knowledge on how to make sure they get increased yield. So that is our main purpose and concentration, and we, by using our commercial system, but also work with other institutions to try to have more channels to get this knowledge out to the farmers community, is what we believe is our primary role as a commercial company in this context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. I'll open up for questions directed at Anne on the fertilizer. I'm sorry. Thank you very much to Anne. I'll just open up for questions directed just to Anne before we move to the rest of the panelists. No doesn't mean you go. You stay with us until past. I'd like to move over to Honorable Minister Marcelo Crivella. Baba, please 2 minutes is now.
I believe you all know what means Baba. It's gentleman in Zulu. Well, I'm Minister of Fishery in Brazil. We are very excited here in our country to enter in a new cycle of production of protein, and a very good protein. As you all know, we are the second largest producers of cattle in the world, but we want to enter in this new phase. We also have resources in water, fresh water. That's the largest in the world. And that's why I'm here, and I'll be glad to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baba, for keeping that short. I'll move over now to Dr. Frank from the CEO of CGIAR Consortium. Fresh from the box with us. Give us your 2 minutes now.
Thank you. Not only is agriculture the largest supplier of jobs, the largest employer, it is of course also the sector that uses the most land and indeed has a very large environmental footprint. We're very aware of that. We're very pleased that agriculture is probably for the first time in a big environmental summit so much squarely and centrally on the agenda. Faced with environmental degradation, climate change, scarcity of land and water, and a growing population, we firmly believe that the solution of all these challenges can really only be through sustainable agriculture, and particularly through an integrated landscape approach. So I'm here in Rio on behalf of the CGIAR, which is the world's largest publicly funded research partnership that advances science to reduce global poverty and hunger by addressing issues related to climate change and farming and forestry and environment and natural resources management. And we have reorganized ourselves from 15 separate institutes into a single consortium that now has a single focused portfolio of research programs to address these challenges. And we are here today launching this portfolio, $5 billion over 5 years, which is the largest effort through public funding to address these key challenges that we face today. We have also published a plan of action that I won't go into here today, but it's available on the website, that very much takes the messages of the Commission on Climate Change and Sustainable Agriculture forward and brings them here into Rio. Of course, sustainable intensification in a landscape approach, we believe is the core of the business, but we shouldn't forget that smallholder farmers, and there's 500 million of them, they provide more than 80% of the food in many developing countries. Maybe not Brazil anymore, but many other countries, smallholder farmers are the backbone of agriculture. And at the same time, they are the majority of poor people, and surprisingly, at the same time, they're the majority of food insecure people. And the majority of them are women. So we have a number of issues that cut across this. Focus on gender, focus on capacity building, all these are critical if we want to move this forward. And we are very pleased that the kind of examples that Rachel Kite gave of climbing beans that triple the income of farmers with nutritious food, or farmers like, I have her name here, for instance, Mary Sikirwai in Zimbabwe, who is using CIMMYT's new drought-resistant maize. She's a maize farmer. And last year in Zimbabwe, even though there wasn't a drought, there was actually a flood, which was probably more challenging for drought-resistant maize. Her crop yield was 5.5 tons instead of the 3.5 tons that it was the year before. So those are the kind of examples of translating science and technology directly into improved lives, livelihoods, and a food secure future that we are after. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. And finally, to Anne.
Thank you. FAO has 3 major messages here and 5 concrete actions that we are proposing. First of all, and to set the stage, we have to realize that the millions of people who manage agricultural systems, from the very poorest to the most commercialized farmers, constitute the largest group of natural resource managers on Earth. Their decisions, as well as those of the world's 7 billion consumers, are key to both global food security and the health of the world ecosystems. So we believe that unless purposeful action is taken, we will not be able to feed the people we need to feed by 2050 unless we can bring together these issues of the environment and hunger and sustainability. So our 3 messages. The Rio vision of sustainable development cannot be realized until hunger and malnutrition are eradicated. The Rio vision requires that both consumption and production systems need to achieve more with less. And third, the transition to a sustainable future requires fundamental changes in the governance of food and agriculture and an equitable distribution of the transition costs. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we open up for questions now, and we're going to be losing Anne just now. So if you have anything burning before she goes, your time is now.
Can a food secure future be built on smallholder farming, or is smallholder farming going to be part of the problem? If we're going to invest in agriculture, in sustainable intensification, can smallholders do it or not?
Please, who are you targeting that question towards, so that at least...
I guess Frank mentioned the issue most directly, but
Frank.
the others may have a view.
Thank you.
Well, clearly, smallholder farmers aren't the only solution to the world's food security. But certainly, if we are interested in food security for the world's poor, then smallholder farmers are the key. We also know that investments in agriculture directly targeted at smallholders are the best way of lifting those same smallholders out of poverty. So yes, I mean, we may not have to work only through smallholders for the world's food security, but if you're interested in looking at improving a lot of the hundreds of millions of the most vulnerable, then smallholders are the heart of the issue.
Very much. Any addition to that?
I would just like to make one point. I agree with what Frank just said. I think we need to, instead of focusing on the size of the farmers, we need to focus on the fact that, as Kanayo said earlier, these farmers are professionals, they are business people, and whatever the size of their plot, whether it's 2 hectares or 500 hectares, they need to be able to make a good return. And I think if we can focus on this, closing the yield gap and ensuring that farmers can get a good price for their products, we will go a long way towards solving the world's hunger problems.
Thank you.
I'm curious, you talk about $5 billion over 5 years. Is that just restating the money that's already at the institutions, or is there new money in that? Can you kind of explain what that is and what's different in that than it was 6 months ago?
Yes, we believe that after sort of a generation of ignoring agriculture, where we've seen the share of agriculture in the overall, say, development aid portfolio go from, it was about 8 billion in the 90s to almost nothing in about 2000. You know, that sort of generation of neglect has to stop. Clearly, food security is back at the top of the agenda. That will require a lot of new money, not just for research. I mean, there are estimates that investments in agriculture in Africa would require as much as $20 billion a year. So that is much larger numbers, most of it new money that we are talking about. But assessments from IFPRI have also said that if you need innovation to, in a way, kickstart that engine of change, you'd need at least $1 billion by 2013 in research through the global publicly funded system ourselves. At that time, our budget was more around 400 million. I'm happy to report that this year we are expecting about 800 million, meaning we don't have that billion quite in hand, but we are progressing through largely new money towards that goal. IFPRI also said that by about 2018, to meet these needs for sustainable intensification of farming, there would need to be about 1.6 billion. So for that we need considerably increased investments from all concerned.
So is this 5 billion that you're saying, is that
The 5 billion is the billion per year. This year we are at about 800 million. So we need, that is considerably more than 3 years ago when we were at 400 million. So there is about half in new money and a bit more to go.
Where is this money coming
From the members of the CGIR, about 60 countries, the World Bank, FAO, IFAD are all members of this consortium. While there is a group of countries that support the publicly funded system on research in agriculture. I won't go through the whole list, but it's mostly countries, multilateral organizations, and some foundations. Traditionally, the Ford Foundation and Rockefeller, and these days also very much the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Hello. This question is addressed to Frank. What's being done for the last mile implementation problems that come out of the CGIR system? I suppose this is something that Minister Marcelo could also address. Embrapa, for example, does great research. CGIR obviously does very good research. But the problem that farmers often face is that extension systems, national extension systems, do not take in inputs from that system to then share it with the farmers. What's being done for that? Thank you.
Well, that's obviously a critical problem. I mean, in a way, the strength of the CGIR is what we call, the global public goods, the sort of knowledge that we shared with everyone. To get that into the hands of farmers, much more needs to be done. Strong partnerships with what we call the national systems, like Embrapa, and many of them in Africa as well. Also strong partnerships for that particular issue with the private sector. We see a lot of challenges in, say, developing the seed supply system. Working with the private sector there is a key area. So the CGIR research portfolio has some research programs that focus on basically improved germplasm in wheat, rice, maize, but also a number of them that focus on farming systems, such as the dryland areas, such as human tropics. And those are the areas where we focus on, in a way, delivering innovation to farmers and focusing on adoption, access to markets, policies of governments to make that happen, and indeed strong partnerships with both governments, national research systems, and the private sector.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. There's going to be a lot of words in the ministerial in the next few days. A lot of promises are going to be made. Are there any specifics that you hope to come out of the meeting later this week? And can you be a bit concrete about what things that are said here might make a difference to what you're trying to do on the ground? That's a kind of general question for everybody.
Oh.
Can I start? Well, here in Brazil, we are trying to change the production or the profile of our production of protein. We are spending too much land with cattle, and we have a herd of about 180 million heads, bulls, and not more than 5,000 people. They get more than half of that. We believe that fish could solve the problem. We have 8.5 billion cubic meters of sweet water. Just to give you an idea, Russia is the second country, is less than half, and we can produce with much more economic results, sustainability, and also distribution of richness with our, lower income people. This is what we are trying to do in Brazil. This is our dream. This is something we would like to to have from this big convention we are doing now. I think we could be a very good example to the world. Here in Brazil, we are falcons in 3 species, but the most important one is tilapia. We are trying to grow this fish in just 3 months and feeding with 1.2 kgs of food to grow 1 kg. We are also taking the viscera to produce what we call here biodiesel. And we are also using, the rest of the fish, that's 35 to 40% of meat itself, to produce ração, food to feed other animals and so forth. I think this is something exciting that we are trying to discuss in our meeting here, and could take Brazil to another step of sustainability and production of food for the world.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think there are 3 concrete outcomes that we would like to see, and 2 of them we are seeing. The first is that agriculture has moved from being the problem to being part of the solution in the sustainability debate. And I think we've seen that very, very strongly here, and it's due to the work of a lot of organizations, including FAO, EFAD, World Food Program, but also the CG system, to help people understand, as we said, farmers are the largest managers of natural resources. And if we don't work with them and help them to be more sustainable, we are not going to get to the future we want, as this conference is titled. I think the other important message that's coming out of the negotiations for me is that we can't only tackle the production side, we also have to tackle the consumption side. And the issue of food waste was discussed earlier in the meeting, and the issue of consumption also patterns. And I think we know that we have a lot of room to improve, for example, the efficiency of livestock production, the efficiency of poultry production. And I always say it's not so much the animals that we're consuming, it's what those animals are consuming that's the worry. And I think we see a recognition that the issue needs to be solved on both sides. The one issue I'm disappointed about, and Lindiwe may say more about this, we had very good language in the earlier text on gender and the importance particularly of women in agriculture, given that they are the majority of smallholders in developing countries. And as was said last night, gender is now one of a list of many, many, many other attributes of that we need to be addressing. But we really think gender needs to be a topic in its own right, because if we don't bring women equal, equitable access to resources, we aren't going to solve the hunger problem or the sustainability problem.
Excellent. Thank you. We've got about 3-4 minutes before we bring this to a close. Any other questions? So.
This question's directed to Anne. Anne, you've worked on the issue of policy reform in developed countries for a very long time in agriculture. When we look at the draft text that we have now, we've seen that the issue of trade and agriculture and the reform of harmful policies has basically disappeared. What does that mean?
Could partly mean that some countries think this is not the venue to be talking about trade issues. And I suspect that's by and large what it is. But, you know, this is an issue, trade is an issue that has fueled a lot of emotions. And I think we still have a great deal of what I would call fundamentalism on both sides of that issue that are making it difficult to find sort of a practical middle ground where we can actually try to find some solutions. We know that not all countries can be food secure with their own production because their demand may be larger than they can produce. They may be demanding other kinds of crops, or they may have a bad year. So we need to recognize the role of trade in the agricultural system and in food security. The policy issues are just tougher, and I haven't been working on them for this long without knowing that. So.
Go ahead.
For the minister, how far do you see this conversion to tilapia going? Are we going to be at the Hodizio having tilapia and not the picanha now?
Well, this is our challenge, but we decided to do that. I think that this responsibility came to our mind 9 years ago when our President Lula, created the Ministry of Fishery. And from there we are working hard to change our profile and to produce much more fish than we have done before. Our people here in Brazil, as you said, we have picanha, and they just eat 9 kgs of fish per year. This is half of the consumption of the world per capita. We have to improve it. But as I said to you, our resources are so big that it's a contingency of our destiny to reach that and to do that.
Thank you very much. We have 1 minute.
Could I just ask again about fishery? Is it your intention that most of the fish will be eaten by humans, or that they will be eaten by livestock? What's the emphasis?
By humans. By humans. It's for the mankind. Definitely.
I think we're bang on time. We've exhausted all the questions. Thank you very much to the team that's been responding to the questions, and thanks to you who've taken time and interest to ask the questions. We bring this to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.